and welcome back to the TCP News Break. I am so glad to have our special news break guest with us this morning, Michael Schroeder, who is the founder of the Annville Protestors for Racial Justice. Am I correct?
Yeah, Annville Town Square Protestors for Racial Justice. I know it's a mouthful, but yes.
Awesome. And you know what? Annville is out in Lebanon County, correct?
Yeah, we're about halfway between Hershey and Lebanon.
All right. Yeah. So, and you know what? So just in Central PA in general, we don't really think that people are protesting just all over the place. And so when I saw that you guys were about to have your 100th protest, I was like, oh my goodness, you guys have been in Annville doing some work. So I definitely wanted to bring you in for an interview to share what you guys are doing out there and just how can we in Lancaster County and other areas of Central PA, how can we support what you guys are doing out there? Because it's important that we all support the movement across the board, wherever we can, however we can.
Right, exactly right. Well, that's why I appreciate you reaching out, Whitney. It's really, it's very heartening to know that, people are paying attention because we've been out there twice a week. Well, actually, we did every day in a row. We started on, when was it? It was Friday, June 5th. We had a big protest in Lebanon, a big Black Lives Matter protest in Lebanon. It was probably close to 1,000 people in the aftermath of George Floyd's brutal killing by Minneapolis police. That was on Thursday, June 4th, 2020. And then the following day, on June 5th, we began a 30 consecutive day protest action in Annville in the town square to follow up on the Lebanon protest. That culminated on, when was it? It was Sunday, July 5th. And I organized a public oration of Frederick Douglass's famous 1852 speech, "What to the slave is the 4th of July." I'm a historian. I teach history at Lebanon Valley College. This is one of the documents. I think it's one of the most important documents in American history. It really exposes the hypocrisy and what I think of as the foundational sin of this republic, founded on the notion of freedom and the reality of racialized slavery. And Frederick Douglass gets, as he often does, gets right to the core, to the heart of that contradiction and that hypocrisy. So we did a big public oration in the town square. And then it was kind of over. And then I just kind of canvassed people and said, "Do you want to keep going?" And people said, "Yeah, let's keep doing it." And so we did it once a week on Wednesdays into September. And then a friend of mine said, "You know what? I'm going to organize it on Saturdays too." So since September of 2020, we've been holding Black Lives Matter protest actions in the Annville Town Square on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 4 to 5 p.m. And we're going to keep going until we eradicate racism in the United States of America, which I suspect will be through the rest of the third decade of the 21st century and beyond. So, we're just going to keep on going.
And you know what, that is awesome. And so many ideas of how to protest, what to do during a protest. Definitely sharing the words of Frederick Douglass is moving. I mean, it's riveting. I'm very familiar with that piece, and that's amazing. I know a lot of people would rather hide his words and not share them out in public because he can really get to the core of some issues.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. And in fact, it was such a successful event last year that we are holding it. We're doing the second annual Frederick Douglass public oration this year, and it is going to be held on the campus of Lebanon Valley College instead of in the town square, which was kind of noisy. There was truck traffic and there were motorcycles and so on. It was a very successful event, but it wasn't the best venue, and so we're going to head on up to the campus of Lebanon Valley College. It's going to be actually hosted by Lebanon Valley College and sponsored by our recently formed Lebanon County branch of the NAACP, on which I'm on the organizing committee. Actually, branch in formation. We're still in the process of forming. So that'll be on, Monday, July 5th of this year, starting at noon. So anybody who's interested, last year, The president of the African American Historical Society of South Central PA, Dr. Leroy Hopkins, was one of our public orators, one of our community orators, and so too was Gerald Wilson, who's also with the African American Historical Society. I think he's the secretary. So we're trying to work together with our brothers and sisters in Lancaster and throughout Central PA to really keep shining a spotlight on this issue of racial injustice, because now is the moment, and I feel that we really need to seize this moment and make this stuff happen.
Yeah, definitely. We're living in historical times. Our grandkids, great grandkids, they'll ask us about what happened, and we'll be able to really share, where we were and what we chose to do during this time.
Exactly right. I couldn't agree more that, the historians looking back saying this is the largest mobilization of people out in the street protesting for civil rights in the United States of America in the history of the Republic. There's more people in the past year that have been out than were out in the 60s. And what's different this time is that white people are joining in. This is what's fundamentally different. There was some white allyship and participation in the 60s, as you know, but the extent of that, the magnitude of that is much greater this time around, and it's very heartening to see, because as far as I can, from my perspective, that the onus for eradicating racism in this country really lies with white people, because it's white privilege that is really at stake and white supremacy that is really at stake. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. We oftentimes talk about oppression and colonization of American society on the show. So I definitely appreciate you sharing those tidbits. But as far as you guys being out in Lebanon County and the protests and the work that you're doing, why do you feel like protesting and doing that work is important where you guys are at? Like, some people say, oh, there's no Black people out there. Don't worry about it. They're not doing anything out there. Why do you think it's important for you guys to continue to protest and continue the voice of the movement in your community?
That's a great question, Whitney. Thank you for asking that. And I think from our perspective that racism is woven into the fabric of our society. It's not just in the big cities. It's not just where Black people live, right? It's not just where it's predominantly people of color. It is woven into the fabric of our society. So small towns, small communities across the country, including right here in South Central PA. I mean, it's certainly true that our African American population is as a proportion of the total population is low. That doesn't mean that we're sort of racism free, right? In many ways, it's exacerbated by that. We had a racist incident right here in Annville. Sadly, if you Google Annville, Pennsylvania racism, probably one of the first things that'll pop up is an incident that happened probably 5 or 6 years ago at the Just Wing It right downtown, where there's a young Black man and there was an altercation and the police were called and so on. I don't want to get into the details, but this stuff is everywhere, right? And we just saw in what's that little town in Virginia where the veteran was stopped by police and almost shot and killed.
Yeah.
This Karen Nazario in Windsor, Virginia. I mean, they have a population of like 2,000 or 3,000 people. These little communities right here in Lebanon County. We have 13 or 14. It's kind of hard to count because it's hard to keep track. But 13 or 14 municipal police departments, right? There's the city of Lebanon. And then where I live in South Annville Township, they have their little police department. Annville Township has their police department. How are these folks trained? What is their training? What is their use of force policy? And so this kind of stuff can happen anywhere. And that's why we're out there kind of preemptively putting a spotlight on this issue and putting constant sort of public pressure and public awareness, because that's what it'll take to change, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I appreciate it because it's hard work. And so for you, does you doing the protest movement and helping to organize that, how did that lead the way to expanding and making a branch for the NAACP in Annville?
Well, they're really not that related. I mean, I guess it's part of the same organic kind of process of social mobilization. But honestly, I met the young woman who was the kind of the instigator or the main organizer of the Lebanon County branch when we had our Frederick Douglass debate, our Frederick Douglass oration back in July. And so I guess when folks have a similar mindset and are focused on similar goals, their networks kind of overlap and come together. And that's, there's a lot of organic sort of connection between what we believe in, what we're struggling for, and that's what we're continuing to build these connections
That's
and
fabulous.
networks.
Yeah, that's awesome, because you know what, even while doing some of this, you'll have some people say, oh, well, we only want to focus on this, or oh, we only want to do that. And that's fine, but there's also power in working together and finding alliances and building and sharing resources.
Absolutely right. And so there's a lot of overlap between the folks who are, out in the town square protesting, who are members of this branch in formation of the NAACP, who are involved in other kinds of racial and social justice initiatives here in Lebanon County. We're all kind of working in multiple kind of directions and ways toward common goals, I think. So it's very heartening.
All right. So now with these common goals and everything like that, you with the Annville Protestors for Racial Justice, you guys are actually having your 100th Black Lives Matter March this weekend.
This Saturday, 4 to 5 p.m. Be there, be square. We're hoping to get at least 100 people out. The Annville police have been notified. They're going to be on a heightened security. Annville police have been very good about protecting our constitutional right to peaceably assemble in the Annville Town Square twice a week. We have a cordial relations with Annville police because, again, we're exercising our constitutional rights to peaceably assemble, have our voices heard, and insist on an end to racist police violence across the country and right here in our own communities.
Awesome. And so I just want to talk a little bit about some of the goals for the Annville Square Protestors for Racial Justice, so that when people come out to the protest and when they hear about you guys, that they know what they're helping to support, what they're continuing to advocate for, so that they know that their values and your values are all in alignment when they join you. So like some of your short-term goals are to like keep a public spotlight on some of the issues and everything like that. Can you just share how you guys are doing? How's it going with achieving some of your short-term goals?
I think we are keeping a public spotlight on it. That thousands of people pass by the Annville Town Square during those 2 hours a week when we're there holding our signs. We get a lot of expressions of support. There are honks and waves and thumbs ups and people expressing in myriad ways their support. Sometimes the entire intersection is filled with the sounds of honking vehicles, people expressing their support in all kinds of ways. So we're keeping the public spotlight on it. We're also providing a concrete demonstration to our neighbors, to our fellow community members, that Black Lives Matter is a peaceful, movement for social change. This is the narrative that we are continually sort of bombarded with, especially in right-wing media, is that, these are looters and mobsters who are out looting and burning and stealing and destroying property. And what we want to emphasize is that no, that this is part of a long American tradition. This is about as American as you can get, right? To struggle for equal rights. I mean, the notion that all men are created equal, right, expanded to all people are politically equal. This is foundational to the republic and to the flag for which it stands, right? And so those shorter term goals are providing a concrete example to our fellow neighbors and community members that and it's keeping a spotlight on this. Of course, our longer term goal is to build a tradition of explicitly anti-racist social activism in Lebanon County, and to keep building on that, to build a sense of community and solidarity among our participants. And again, as I said earlier, to put the onus for eradicating racism where it belongs, which is predominantly on white people. to acknowledge the reality of white privilege. It doesn't mean you didn't work hard. It doesn't mean you didn't, work hard for what you have. It means that race was not an obstacle for you, right? As it is for so many others in the United States of America. And then, in terms of the longer term goals, to expand the conversation, because this is not just about racist police violence. It is about that, and that's a crucial issue, but it's also about environmental racism. It's about climate justice and the connection between racial justice and climate justice. It's about housing, employment, healthcare, all this array of broader issues that afflict people of color in this country. And then to work with organizations and institutions locally, nationally, regionally, that share our goals. So, sort of shorter term, longer term, and then ultimately, to eradicate racism. Well, that's the prize that we're keeping our eyes on.
Yeah, and that's the goal, I think, all around, what we're all hoping for. Now, before you go, and I know that there's this thing that I don't know if you've heard it. That's like there's Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and in between is Kentucky.
I never heard that before. No, are you serious? In Kentucky?
Yeah.
Kentucky, yes.
Yep. And so my question for you is, how has the movement been received by the broader Annville community? Do you feel as though you guys are making headway, or that you guys are at least starting to have more conversations about racial justice and policing and what that means?
That's a great question. And, in some ways it's too early to tell, but I can say it's a mixed reception, right? That it's not sort of universal acclaim. We get a fair amount of opposition. There are times when the intersection is filled with honks and waves and friendly gestures, but we also get all kinds of vulgar, racist responses. We get the bird flipped at us. We get, I've gotten sort of air guns sort of shot at me. People take, finger guns. People take out they have a little Confederate flag that they'll hold up and put in the window and say, and then, racist comments that people shout out their windows. So, there is, we have a lot of work to do here in central Pennsylvania. White supremacy dies hard, right? It is a powerful, resilient, resolute force in the history of our country. And it's not going to be eradicated overnight. And a historical pattern is that those with power, those with privilege are reluctant to give it up. And so, it's actually, to be honest with you, it's a very mixed reception. But I think we're making headway, and I think there's far more support. I am heartened to say that there actually is, more support than there is opposition. So that's a good start.
Awesome. And before you go, just one more time for the people just tuning in, can you tell them where they can join you this Saturday and what time for the protest?
Yeah, absolutely. We're in Annville, Pennsylvania, Annville, and we're about halfway between Hershey and Lebanon, and it's the only street light in town. It's at the intersection of Route 934 and Route 422, right square downtown Annville, Pennsylvania. There's free parking behind the municipal building, just a stone's throw away from the town square. And again, we're hoping to get 100 people or more out this weekend. So come and join us. Lend your voices, lend your placards and signs, and join us in this effort to raise public awareness about Black Lives Matter and about eradicating racism here in Central PA and around our country.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us, Michael. And how can people get in contact with you?
They can look on Facebook, Michael Schroeder, in Annville, Pennsylvania. And I guess I'll
drop some information down in the comments for you guys, so that we'll drop his Facebook information down in the comments, so that you guys can reach out to him and contact with him on his Facebook, or you can reach out directly to us and we will get you in contact with Michael.
Okay, great. I can also say I teach history at Lebanon Valley College, so just go to Lebanon Valley College website, go to the history department. My email is right there. Awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us, Michael, and thank you for picking up your torch and helping to fight the fight.
And thank you so much, Whitney, for the interview and for all the work that you do.
Awesome, thank you. Well, guys, stay tuned for TCP in the morning.